Welcome to Innovation Pulse, your quick, no-nonsense update on the latest in clean tech and EVs. First, we will cover the latest news. Waymo's self-driving rides remain popular despite higher costs, while Nepal leads an electric vehicle revolution with strategic policies promoting growth. After this, we'll dive deep into BYD's game-changing Seagull, the $8,000 electric car shaking up the automotive industry with its innovative approach and market disruption. Waymo's self-driving rides are more expensive than Uber or Lyft, yet remain popular. A study by Obi, an app, comparing real-time ride prices, reveals Waymo's rides average $20.43, higher than Uber's $15.58 and Lyft's $14.44. Waymo's pricing is less sophisticated, leading to more variability, especially for short trips. Despite higher costs and longer wait times, demand isn't decreasing. Obi's survey found 70% of users preferred driverless cars, citing excitement and comfort, though safety remains a concern for 74%. Remarkably, 16.3% are willing to pay up to $10 more for the driverless experience. This suggests a strong appeal for the novelty and privacy of autonomous vehicles, even at a premium price. Nepal, known for its stunning mountains and trekking tourism, is quietly leading an electric vehicle revolution. About 70% of new cars sold recently are electric, challenging the notion that electric vehicles are for wealthier nations. Nepal's success is largely due to strategic policies like reduced import duties for electric vehicles, making them affordable. The country's energy is almost entirely hydroelectric, providing clean power for these vehicles. Nepal's government and public transport systems, including electric buses and three-wheelers, are embracing electrification, reducing pollution and costs. Charging infrastructure is expanding, with plans to double public charging stations soon. This transition has spurred economic growth, creating jobs in various sectors. However, challenges like battery waste management and infrastructure development remain. Nepal's experience offers valuable lessons for other countries, proving that with smart policies and investments, even low-income nations can shift to clean transportation. And now, pivot our discussion towards the main clean tech topic.
All right, everybody. Welcome to another deep dive on Innovation Pulse. I'm Donna, and as always, I'm here with my co-host, Yakov Lasker. Today, we're talking about something that's got the entire automotive industry looking over their shoulders, and honestly, maybe losing some sleep. Yakov, lay it on me. What's got everyone so worked up?
Well, Donna, imagine if I told you there's an electric car that costs $8,000, drives like a proper vehicle, comes loaded with tech features, and is currently the best-selling car in the entire Chinese market. Would that get your attention?
8,000? Wait, hold up. Are we talking about some golf cart with doors? Or is this actually a real car that can, merge onto a highway without causing a traffic incident?
That's exactly what makes this so fascinating. The BYD Seagull, and yes, that's really its name, isn't some stripped-down penalty box. We're talking about a car that's roughly the size of what Americans might remember as the Chevy Spark. But it comes with a 15-inch touchscreen, driver assistance features, and build quality that apparently doesn't scream budget compromise.
Okay, so let's break this down step by step, because I think our listeners are probably having the same reaction I am right now. When most of us think about cheap cars, we think about, well, cheap cars. You know what I mean? Plastic everything, weird rattles, the kind of car that makes you feel like you're being punished for not having more money.
Exactly, and that's precisely why this is such a big deal. Here's what's really interesting. BYD managed to create what one automotive journalist called dignified transportation. The car apparently feels cohesive with BYD's more expensive models. Same software, same screen quality, same level of fit and finish. The main differences are just size. range, and power output.
That's a completely different philosophy than what we see from most automakers, isn't it? Usually there's this clear hierarchy where the cheap car gets the cheap everything. Old infotainment systems, hard plastics, fewer features. It's like the automotive version of airplane seating classes.
Right. And that gets to the heart of why Western automakers are reportedly terrified of this thing. Let me give you some context. In China, a Honda Fit, which is an internal combustion engine car, starts at around $12,000. That's $4,000 more than the Seagull, and you get fewer tech features and higher operating costs.
So the value proposition isn't even close. But Yakov, help me understand something. How is BYD pulling this off? Because if it were easy to make a great $8,000 car, wouldn't everyone be doing it?
That's the million-dollar question, Donna. Part of it comes down to fundamentally different cost structures. China has lower labor costs, sure, but that's not the whole story. BYD has achieved something called vertical integration that apparently surpasses even Tesla. They're making more of their own components in-house, which gives them more control over costs and quality.
Vertical integration. Let's pause there for our listeners who might not be familiar with that term. Yakov, can you walk us through what that means in practical terms?
Absolutely, most car companies are essentially assemblers. They design a car, then they contract out the manufacturing of seats to one company, electronics to another, batteries to a third company, and so on. Each of those suppliers needs to make their own profit margin. But when you're vertically integrated, like BYD, you're making the batteries, the semiconductors, maybe even the steel yourself. You eliminate all those middleman profits.
Ah, so it's not just about cheap labor. It's about completely rethinking how you structure the business. That makes sense. But here's what I'm wondering about. Is this actually a good car to drive? Or are we just talking about a really well-equipped appliance?
This is where it gets really interesting. The journalist who tested it spent about 2 hours driving it around Suzhou, that's a city outside Shanghai, and came away genuinely impressed. We're talking about a car with 75 horsepower and a 13-second 0 to 60 time. So no, it's not going to win any drag races.
13 seconds? Okay, so we're definitely in patience is a virtue territory here.
Exactly, but here's the thing. For city driving and daily commuting, that's perfectly adequate. The real surprise was apparently how refined it felt. Smooth ride quality, responsive steering, good chassis tuning. The kind of driving dynamics that usually take years of experience to get right, and BYD apparently nailed it on their first try with this platform.
That's actually remarkable when you think about it, because getting suspension tuning right, making a car feel composed and planted, that's typically where you see the difference between experienced automakers and newcomers. It's not just about bolting parts together. It's about understanding how all those systems work together.
And that brings us to why this has broader implications beyond just one cheap car. What we're seeing here mirrors what happened in the smartphone industry. Remember when Chinese phone makers like Xiaomi started offering flagship-level features at a fraction of the price of an iPhone?
Oh, absolutely. I remember when people were skeptical about those phones, and now brands like OnePlus and others are serious competitors. Are you suggesting we're seeing the same pattern in cars?
That's exactly what I'm suggesting. The Seagull is like the automotive equivalent of those early Chinese smartphones that made people think, wait, why am I paying twice as much for basically the same functionality?
Right. And that raises a really important question about market strategy. Because it sounds like most Western automakers have basically abandoned the budget segment entirely. They're focusing on higher margin, more expensive vehicles. Is that creating an opportunity for companies like BYD?
Donna, you've hit on something crucial here. In the United States especially, automakers have largely pushed budget-conscious buyers toward their used car lots, rather than offering genuinely affordable new vehicles. That wasn't always the case. We used to have cars like the original Honda Civic or Toyota Corolla that were basic but dignified transportation for people starting out.
So there's almost a vacuum in the market. And while American and European automakers are chasing higher profit margins on luxury EVs and SUVs, Chinese companies are focusing on making electric vehicles accessible to regular people. That seems like a pretty significant strategic difference.
Exactly, and the numbers bear this out. The Seagull isn't just selling well, it's the best-selling car in China. Not the best-selling electric car, not the best-selling budget car. The best-selling car, period. That suggests there's massive demand for this kind of product.
Now, I have to imagine there are some trade offs here. What are the limitations? Because nothing is perfect, especially at this price point.
Good question. The range is limited. We're talking about roughly 190 miles on the Chinese testing cycle, which probably translates to less in real-world conditions. The top speed is capped at 81 methameter. And while the journalist was impressed with the driving dynamics, this isn't going to satisfy anyone looking for sports car performance.
But for someone who needs basic, reliable transportation for commuting and errands, especially in urban areas where you're not doing a lot of highway driving, those limitations might not matter much. It's about matching the product to the actual use case, rather than trying to be everything to everyone.
Right. And here's something interesting about market positioning. In Shanghai, the city government has actually banned residents from driving cars under 4 meters long that cost less than $14,000. They consider them too basic for the city's image, but visitors can drive them there.
Wait, so they banned cars for being too affordable? That's fascinating from a social policy perspective. It suggests that even in China, there are different attitudes about what constitutes appropriate transportation for different economic classes.
Exactly, and it forced the journalist to travel to a smaller city to actually test the car. But here's what's telling. When he got to Suzhou, which is more of a working-class industrial city, he saw lots of these budget-friendly Chinese EVs on the roads. It's serving a real market need.
So we've got this tension between aspirational transportation and practical transportation. The expensive EVs that get all the media attention versus the affordable ones that people actually buy and drive every day. Yakov, what does this mean for the global automotive industry?
Well, BYD is already expanding internationally. They've launched a version of the Seagull in Europe called the Dolphin Surf, and they're offering €99 per month lease deals. That's roughly $110 a month for a brand new electric car.
$110 a month? That's less than many people spend on their phone plan. If that pricing model comes to other markets, it could completely reshape how people think about car ownership versus leasing.
And that's exactly why established automakers are concerned. It's not just about one model or one company. It's about a fundamental shift in what consumers might start expecting. Why pay $40,000 or $50,000 for an electric car when you can get most of the same functionality for a fraction of the cost?
This reminds me of something we've talked about before on the show: how innovation often comes from companies that aren't constrained by existing business models. BYD doesn't have to worry about protecting profit margins on expensive vehicles because they're building their business around volume and efficiency rather than exclusivity.
That's a great point, Donna. And it connects to a broader trend we're seeing across industries. Whether it's streaming services disrupting cable TV or ride-sharing challenging taxi services, the disruptors often succeed by making something expensive and exclusive into something affordable and accessible.
So if you're a traditional automaker right now, what do you do? Do you try to compete on price? Or do you double down on premium features and brand prestige?
That's the strategic dilemma. Competing on price means accepting much lower profit margins, which Wall Street typically doesn't love. But ignoring the budget segment means potentially ceding huge market share to Chinese competitors. And once those competitors establish themselves in affordable segments, there's nothing stopping them from moving upmarket.
Right, we've seen that playbook before. Japanese automakers started with budget cars in the 1970s and eventually moved into luxury with brands like Lexus and Acura. Korean companies like Hyundai and Kia followed a similar path. Now, Chinese companies might be the next wave.
And the electric vehicle transition might actually accelerate this process. When you're not dealing with complex internal combustion engines and transmissions, technologies where established automakers have decades of expertise, the playing field becomes more level. An electric motor is an electric motor, whether it's in a Tesla or a BYD.
That's such an important insight. The shift to electric vehicles might be eliminating some of the traditional barriers to entry in automotive manufacturing. And if a company like BYD can deliver most of the functionality people actually need at a much lower price point, that could reshape the entire industry.
Exactly. And here's something to consider for our listeners. This isn't just an abstract business story. For millions of people around the world who have been priced out of new vehicle markets, cars like the Seagull could represent genuine transportation solutions. We're talking about making electric vehicle technology accessible to people who otherwise couldn't afford it.
Which brings us back to a theme we often discuss on Innovation Pulse: how the most impactful innovations are often the ones that democratize access to technology. It's not always about the flashiest or most advanced product. Sometimes it's about making good enough technology available to everyone.
And good enough might be understating it. From what we've discussed, the Seagull seems to offer a genuinely pleasant ownership experience, not just basic transportation. That combination of affordability and dignity in the product experience, that's potentially powerful.
So, as we wrap up here, Yakov, what's your take on where this all leads? Are we looking at a fundamental shift in the global automotive landscape? Or is this more of a regional phenomenon that might not translate to other markets?
I think we're looking at the early stages of a major shift, Donna. The success of the Seagull and similar vehicles suggests there's massive pent-up demand for affordable, well-executed electric vehicles. And as Chinese automakers continue to expand internationally, traditional automakers are going to have to decide whether they want to compete in that space or cede it entirely.
Which could force everyone to innovate not just on technology, but on business models and cost structures. Competition is usually good for consumers, so this could ultimately drive better, more affordable options across the board.
Exactly. And for our listeners who are thinking about their next vehicle purchase, it's worth keeping an eye on how this plays out. The automotive landscape might look very different in just a few years, with more options at more price points than we've seen in decades.
Well, there you have it, folks. The $8,000 electric car that's got the automotive world talking. As always, the most interesting innovations often come from unexpected places and challenge our assumptions about what's possible. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive on Innovation Pulse. I'm Donna.
And I'm Yakov Lasker. Keep questioning the conventional wisdom, and we'll see you next time.
Until next time, everybody.
And that's a wrap for today's podcast. We explored the premium pricing yet lasting appeal of Waymo's self-driving rides compared to Uber and Lyft, discussed Nepal's quiet triumph in leading an electric vehicle revolution, and highlighted the disruptive impact of BYD's cost-effective Seagull in the automotive market. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode with your friends and colleagues so they can also stay updated on the latest news and gain powerful insights. Stay tuned for more updates.